In prison, I was rather interested in my fellow prisoners who seemed to me in no way morally inferior to the rest of the population, though they were on the whole slightly below the usual level of intelligence as was shown by their having been caught. This is from his uh, portraits from memory. On marriage, naivety is one thing, wisdom is another. One eminently orthodox Catholic divine laid it down that a confessor may fondle a nun's breast, provided he does it without evil intent. But I doubt whether modern authorities would agree with him on this point. Tolstoy and Mahatma Gandhi, in their old age, laid it down that all sexual intercourse is wicked, even in marriage and with a view to offspring. Celibacy was considered holy, and men retired into the desert to wrestle with Satan while he filled their imaginations with lustful visions. In order to avoid the risk of certain abuses to morality, it would be necessary that all policemen and all medical men should be castrated. Perhaps it would be wise to carry this policy further in view of the inherent depravity of the male character. I am inclined to think that moralists could be well advised to advocate that all men should be castrated, with the exception of ministers of religion. Since reading Oliver Gantry, I have begun to feel that even this exception is perhaps not quite wise. It has not been expected of a man that he should be a virgin before entering marriage, and even after marriage, infidelity is not viewed very gravely if they never come to the knowledge of a man's urge and neighbors. Few would suggest that women should acquire the same rights as men through this establishment of a class of male prostitutes for the satisfaction of women who wish, like their husbands, to seem virtuous without being so. From St. Paul, one gathers that marriage is to be regarded solely as a more or less legitimate outlet for lust. The desire for legitimate offspring is in fact, according to the Catholic Church, the only motive which can justify sexual intercourse. Then there are all kinds of inferences as regards divorce from the Catholic extreme, which permits no divorce, to the laws of old church, which permitted a man to divorce his wife for being a chatterbox. In due course, we must expect a complete breakdown of traditional morality, since there will be no longer any reason why a mother should wish the paternity of her could be indubitable when the state is taking care of the children. Cruelty is in theory a perfectly adequate ground for divorce, but it may be interpreted so as to become absurd. When the most eminent of all film stars was divorced by his wife for cruelty, one of the counts in the proof of cruelty was that he used to bring home friends who talked about Kant. I can hardly suppose that it was the intention of the Californian legislators to enable any woman to divorce her husband on the ground that he was sometimes guilty of intelligent conversation in her presence. The substitution of evidence for dogma as a basis for belief is one of the great achievements that science has conferred upon mankind. During the identification of religion with virtue, together with the fact that the most religious men are not the most intelligent, a religious education gives courage to the stupid to resist the authority of educated men. If Shakespeare does not give you delight, you had better ignore him. Dread of disaster makes everybody act in the very way that increases the disaster. The situation is analogous to that of people trampled to death when there is a panic in a theatre caused by a cry of fire. You say, if you are an old-fashioned schoolmaster, wish to consider yourself full of universal benevolence and at the same time derive great pleasure from canning the boys. In order to reconcile the two desires, you have to persuade yourself that canning has a reformatory influence. If a psychiatrist tells that it has no such influence on some peculiarly irritating class of young sinners, you will fly into a rage and accuse him of being coldly intellectual. So long as men are not trained to withhold judgment in the absence of evidence, they will be led astray by cocksure prophets, and it is likely that their leaders will be either ignorant fanatics or dishonest Christians, charlatans.